just like a song, and brighten my day. Who'd have believed that you were part of a dream? Now it all seems like years away. You know I can't smile without you. I can't smile without you. I can't laugh, I can't sing. I'm finding it hard to do anything, and I feel sad when you're sad. I feel glad when you're glad. If you only knew what I'm going through, I just can't smile without you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kish, aka the Cottage Tactico, online analyst, tactical obsessive, contributor to the Fulham Focus podcast, but most importantly, just a massive Fulham fan, season ticket holder in the mighty Hammersmith End H5 at Craven Cottage. All in all, I spent far too much time thinking about, writing about, tweeting about everything related to Fulham Football Club, with a particular focus, like I said, on the tactics, the analytics, the data, everything that comes into Marco Silva's game plan and how he sets us up for what has been a really positive tenure in the Premier League since he got us promoted a few seasons back. And I know you guys want to have a look ahead to this game. I'm really looking forward to breaking it down because I think that it's a really interesting battle, and it comes at a particular point of the season where both sides have a real point to prove. But we're going to start off with a look at Fulham's season so far. And I think our season so far has been defined by the summer and the fact that we had a fairly dysfunctional and slow summer in the transfer market. Is something that the manager has clearly been very, very disappointed about. It's led to him not signing a new contract, which is making us all feel quite stressed out, and perhaps led to an air of uncertainty for this side. But the main concern with us doing business so late and perhaps not doing all the business that we should have done is that we stood still. And I think what we've learned is that no matter how secure and how well you think you're doing in the Premier League, it's a really ruthless league and you get found out and you cannot afford to stand still. That being said, look, Marco Silva has drilled this side well. He knows the players that he has at his disposal. And I think that even though we were fairly slow to start, it wasn't looking too catastrophic. We got a decent point away at Brighton, and then a few things started to go against us. We had a number of injuries. We've done really well to avoid injuries so far in our Premier League tenure under Marco Silva, but they started to become a bit of a problem. More on that a bit later, I'm sure. And then a few decisions didn't go away against Chelsea. Josh King's disallowed goal, which you've probably seen doing the rounds online. And then a run of fixtures that were pretty difficult that led to us getting into a fairly sticky place and people starting to question Marco Silva and whether he really is the right man to reinvent this side and go again. If you look at where we are in the table, I think what's become clear is that we started to look over our shoulder at what's going on in the relegation battle rather than dreamily up the table towards Europe, which is what you'd hope for. In reality, I think this Fulham side is still a lower mid-table side. I don't think that we're really the worst of the worst and likely to go down. I don't think we're going to be fighting with other sides looking for Europe. We're somewhere in the middle. And what you can see from our results is that we've got wins, particularly at home, against teams you'd probably expect us to beat at home, the likes of Leeds, Brentford, Wolves, Sunderland. But almost all of our points have come at home. In fact, we've only had that 1 point at the start of the season against Brighton away to shout about. And that's what makes this game, I think, really interesting, because we clearly have an issue when it comes to going on the road this year. I think we've really struggled away from home. My understanding is you guys have struggled at home. So there's a sense that our win last week against Sunderland is a sign that we're starting to get a grip again. Marco Silva seemed a bit of a happier bunny, and I think he'd love to try and build on that with a positive performance here. And similarly, some of the struggles you guys have had, that poor performance in the North London derby, I'd imagine a poor showing at home from Thomas Frank would have his position under real threat. And as a Fulham fan, and given that he's a former Brentford boss, we'd rather like that. So I think this comes at a really interesting time. I think the dynamics of the game are going to be really interesting. How much Thomas Frank decides to go for it. I know he's been criticised for being quite negative. How much Marco Silva decides to go for it. He too has been quite safety first at times this season. But there are a few signs that he made some positive changes that unlocked our attack last time out. Will he go for that again? It's a really, really interesting one. And I think just in general, the recent history of these two sides is also pretty interesting. I think we'd probably got the better of it last season. I thought we performed pretty well over at your place. Tom Kearney coming off the bench to draw us level and then get sent off. He had an eventful day. But And then at the Craven Cottage, I thought it was one of our better performances of the season. Ryan Sessegnon in particular, getting that goal against his former club. So, look, I think we don't really know what to expect going into this one. I think there's a chance that Fulham come out and look a lot better than they've perhaps done at times this season, and it's a sense that we're back. There's a chance that Thomas Frank really goes for it, and Tottenham look a little bit better than they have done recently. But all in all, no one really knows what to expect, and that makes it a really, really fascinating fascinating matchup. Now, talking about lineups, this is how I'd expect Marco Silva's side to line up. There are some variables in this, so we've experimented at times with a 5 at the back this season and last season, particularly in away games where we think we're going to be up against it. I'm not sure, and this is not being cocky because I think it's going to be a really tough game, but I'm not sure Spurs' recent form means that they're considered a team that we absolutely have to go 5 at the back with. I think it's probably likely that Marco Silva sticks to plan A. So when Fulham play 4 at the back, they're essentially something between a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1. And I think much of this team picks itself. So the back 5, Leno in goal. The back 4, Kenny Tete, really tenacious. Jakob Anderson, good on the ball, better off it this season. Calvin Bassey, great off the ball. Struggled a little bit with this form, but was our player of the season last year, really strong. I know he had a shocker against you guys a couple of years ago, playing off his right foot at right centre half. He's much better on his left. And then Ryan Sessegnon, your old boy, filling in at left back, doing a much better job than anyone expected. He's been probably our player of the season in some ways so far. I think that 5's really secure. Sander Berge as the defensive midfield sort of pivot, I think secured his place in the side with a much better showing last week. He's been a little bit out of form, but he looked much more himself. And that's when it gets a little bit more complicated. So Fulham only have one fit striker, and he's barely fit, and that's Raul Jimenez. He will start up front. What we do in the midfield and off the flanks around him is a lot more difficult. Now, there's a version of Marco Silva's side which is much more cautious, that has both Sander Berge and Sasha Lukic alongside him as sort of a double pivot of sorts, and Lukic plays as a defensive-minded number 8. We've looked quite stagnant trying to create stuff doing that, and Marco Silva at times has played just Sander Berge, and Alex Iwobi has dropped into that position and looked a lot more creative. We've looked better doing that. I think in games that we want to go out and win, we should do that. My hope is we do that here, and we see Berge and Iwobi as a midfield too. If Sasha Lukic comes in, Alex Iwobi will play, and he'll probably take one of the attacking slots either off the left or at number 10. My anticipation is it'll be at number 10, and you'd see Berge, Lukic and Iwobi. My instinct is, though, we'll see Berge, Iwobi next to him, trying to create stuff, and then 3 behind Raul Jimenez. That 3 is quite difficult to decide. Fulham do have some options here. Harry Wilson has been playing off the right. Long term, people think Samuel Chukwueze will have that position off the right, cutting in on his left foot. Wilson is a goal threat. I'd imagine he plays here. Josh King has been really bright for Fulham. He's sort of our great young hope. He's been playing in the number 10. His goals and assists don't suggest he's had a great season. Trust me, he has had a great season. He's great. And whilst Emil Smith-Rowe has been doing really well off the bench in his last game, I'm not sure his physicality is there to go from the start. So if we're playing a number 10, a traditional number 10, I'd imagine it's Josh King. And then down the left, Kevin, our big record signing, had been playing off the left. Marco Silva brought Samuel Chukwueze, who's a left footer, and played him as a conventional left winger in the last game. That's not what Marco Silva usually does, but it really worked. So I wonder if we'll see it again here, and we'll see Samuel Chukwueze holding width. It allows someone like Ryan Sessegnon to underlap, and we have a pretty strong left-hand side then with Sess, Iwobi and Chukwueze supporting Raul. So this is what I've gone for. 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 hybrid with Iwobi in the 8, Chukwueze, King and Wilson behind Raul. There's a version of this where we see Lukic. There's a version of this where we still see Kevin. There's a version where Chukwueze comes off the other wing. Let's see. But that is my best stab at what we do. And in a way, it sort of depends on how you guys want to play this as well. Like, we're not sure how Spurs are going to line up in this one. We don't know if they're going to go 5 at the back, 4 at the back. Is it going to be quite a safe midfield of Joao Palhinha and Rodrigo Bentancur? Are you going to let the handbrake off? Are you going to play 2 strikers like you did against PSG? Who knows? I think actually the way this one plays out tactically could be really fascinating. Now, there's been quite a few players who've played for both Fulham and Spurs, although the direction of travel tends to be from us to you. And don't get any ideas about Josh King when you see him at the weekend, all right? Not happening. Not after Cess, please. But if I could take one player from this current Spurs squad, who would I steal? Now, I said earlier that we only have one fit striker. We sort of need another one with Rodrigo Muniz out. And we have been linked to Richarlison in the past. He's played well under Marco Silva. I think he's the sort of character who'd quite enjoy being the main man at Fulham. So, yeah, I could imagine Richarlison being pretty useful in our current predicament because we are so light at striker. But if we're talking about this from a pure player perspective, there is only one answer, and that's Joao Palhinha. Now, I know that you guys have got a bit of a culture war in your fan base going on as to whether he's any good or not. We absolutely adore him at Fulham. Now, yes, we had a bit less ball than you perhaps expect Spurs to have, and the things he's good at made a bigger difference, but we also knew how to use him. And I feel like Marco knows that if you're going to try and boss a game, you need to put somebody who's got real on-ball quality next to Joao Palhinha. We had Tom Kearney playing next to him for a fair period of time when we were winning 5-0 every other week for a very short period of time. And Palhinha is so good off the ball. His physicality is so good. He basically carried Tom Kearney off the ball. Tom Kearney carried him on the ball, and they were a wonderful partnership. I know he frustrates you guys at sometimes, but you don't get players as good at the things Joao Palhinha is good at very often. And if I could have him back at the Cottage, I'd have him in a heartbeat. So, yeah, that's the one for me. Away from stealing players, though, who is it that I fear in this Spurs side? It's an interesting question because I think historically you guys have always had a talisman, right? Like a Bale, a Kane, a Son. That would be the obvious answer here. I'm not sure who that answer necessarily is. Now, it also depends on how you guys play. I mean, I'm not sure if you're going to be playing wingers or not, but on paper, I think Kudus is probably the biggest threat to someone like Fulham. He plays off the right, I'd imagine, and that's where Ryan Sessegnon has been fitting in at left back. He's been doing very well, by the way. He's the player that we thought he was going to be again at Fulham. He's recovered from some of those physical issues he had with you guys. We're getting the best from him. Sess has done an amazing job standing in for Anthony Robinson, but I think Kudus would be a real challenge for him to sort of deal with. So I'd probably go with him. I will say, though, Sess did a very good job with Bukayo Saka when we played against Arsenal. We only lost to a set-piece goal. We locked them down otherwise. So maybe he's up to the challenge. But if I have to choose one, Kudus. But that also lets us ask the question of where can we hurt you? And I've already said that Fulham have looked pretty blunt at times this season. We haven't been at our most incredible attacking best. And in a way, I think our performance against Sunderland, even though it was a 1-0 win with a late goal, we had 24 shots, I think, the most we've had all season. And it was a sign that we were starting to look like we were unlocking ourselves going forward. I hope that continues into this one. It'd be great if it could, not least because we really would like to get one over Thomas Frank, like I said earlier. One thing I would point out, though, is that I noticed Christian Romero is out for you guys, and forget about what that means off the ball. I'm sort of interested in what that means on it. I've seen that Spurs have sometimes struggled a bit to play out of the back, and I imagine losing Romero is not going to help that at all. Fulham haven't really been pressing that much this year, but I wonder if they decide to give it a bit of a go and try and get on the front foot and pen you guys in. And if that's the case, I think maybe our press is something that could hurt Spurs in this one. Right, that takes us to the most important thing of all. Decision time, prediction. Now, I've been doing all right on these on the Fulham Focus podcast this year. I got a perfect score last time with our 1-0 win against Sunderland. So I'm hoping I'm right again. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this one. I think Fulham need to improve their form away from home. I think Spurs need to improve their form at home. I think Marco Silva is trying to prove that he's got this Fulham side going back in the right direction. I think Thomas Frank wants to prove that they're not slipping away under his leadership. I wonder if we're going to get no clear answers in this one and it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Samuel Chukwueze was so bright off the bench, off that left wing. I'd be fascinated to see if he plays there again. I'm pretty sure he'll play. Like I said, I'm just not sure where. But I'm tipping him to score in this one. And would I take that 1-1 draw? Yeah, I would. I mean, I think Spurs away from home, no matter how much you've been struggling at times lately, your position in the table isn't entirely a false one. Any point that we get would be really welcome. So a 1-1 draw for me, I'd absolutely take that. And that takes us to the end of this opposition fan preview. Harry, thank you very much for having me on. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. If it is, check out my work at Cottage Tactico on X in the main or via the Fulham Focus podcast. Enjoy the game. Go on the Fulham.
You came along just like a song and brightened my day. Who'd have believed that you were part of the dream? Now it all